Hello, art dudettes and art dudes. This is your art dude coming at you again with another podcast. This time I want to talk about the auction houses, predominantly the ones in New York. That's what everybody seems to focus on. And there were a number of articles recently in The Art newspaper, which is a online publication. They have an app that you can download as well, but they also have a website. And I read a lot on there. They're really a great resource for articles and things about art and what's going on in the art world, art shows and fairs. And so I highly recommend that you check it out. This week I also listened to an episode of the Week in Art podcast, which came out a couple of days ago. And the first half of the most recent episode, they talked about these auction houses. Sotheby's and Christie's are the two that everybody always talks about. And their November auctions, which are kind of like their fall events, and then they have spring events too. But this year, everybody's talking about these November shows. And the one at Sotheby's focused on some works that were in a collection by a deceased patron of the Whitney Museum. And 1/3 of the proceeds which came in were just for one work by Pablo Picasso, which was pretty interesting. The podcast mentions, and the articles also mention, that the bidding was really kind of light. They didn't get a lot of bids, and most of these auctioned pieces sold within 2 or 3 minutes, which is very interesting, really. I might also want to mention that there were several last-minute works that were withdrawn from the auction, almost like a quarter of the number that they had originally proposed, which I think is kind of a high number to pull from the auction. I don't know what you think, but I'd love to hear your comments and read your comments and see what everybody has to say and think about that. But in terms of the bidding being light, these bids also needed some coaxing to try to get the amounts up. So that was kind of interesting. There were also a large number of these works that were in the auction, which were being backed by third parties as far as guarantees and things like that. I might mention that these auctions predominantly had modern works of art, mostly 20th century pieces, and a couple sold at substantially below the reserve price, which is basically means their minimum bid kind of thing. So those usually have to be agreed upon by whoever's selling the work if they want to take less than that. But a couple of them did sell for less. But what I find really interesting is a lot of the comments that people use to describe it. Some people refer to the ending result as being adequate or lackluster even. Someone even said that the art market is very discerning right now, or downright picky, which was kind of a funny way to describe art buyers. But the CEO at Sotheby's even called the event a collector's market as opposed to a speculator's market. So most of the people who were bidding on these pieces because they wanted to acquire them in their personal collection. So that was kind of discerning, not necessarily discerning, but it definitely illustrates how these auctions at this time of the year are kind of trend and maybe points to the larger economy. And I wanted to kind of look at some of that and how that, if there's a link at all. I did kind of, I used to work in the financial industry, so I spent a little time also looking at the markets and how they've been performing recently. And I mean, the markets they're doing okay. They're up. They're not up a lot, but they're up. But this week being a short week because of the Thanksgiving holiday, there's a lot of data that comes out as far as jobs reports later in the week and things like that. So I think this week will be very interesting to look at how the markets are performing. And then maybe we can get a better idea of how these auction houses and their recent auctions have been performing in relation to the overall economy. So if you get a chance, please make some comments. Let's start some discussion. I'd like to hear what everybody's thoughts are. And if you get a minute, also, please take a few minutes to listen to the podcast, The Week in Art. I think it would be worth your time. Y'all have a good week.